I've been working with you for the last couple of years, but as you say, the relationship with DS Smith goes back even further, 4 or 5 years. And through the LDC, you've given us availability into a broad range of networks, which has meant that at all sorts of levels within our organisation, so from MDs all the way through to frontline managers, the Learning and Development Consortium has opened doors for us, which has meant that we have begun to really understand more about the types of organisations we want to aspire to become. So that's been really helpful. It's not just DS Smith. I think lots of companies I've worked for in the past, you do become quite insular and inward looking. And it's very useful to go and look at the outside world and bring the outside in. It's only by seeing what other companies do that you can get a true idea of whether you're going in the right direction. And other companies bring a completely different slant to different problems. So going to other parts of the UK, other factories, other organisations, it just strengthens your knowledge. Plus you can cherry pick and you can steal with pride. And then the other advantage is actually talking to the people in these other organisations who can then help build your own ideas when you take them back to your own organisation. So yeah, it's been really good. The trips to Nissan always provide me with food for thought. And even if I'm just picking up 2 or 3 ideas from actually meeting the guys up there, they're very valuable ideas. So I've really enjoyed all of the visits up to Nissan, and I know that everybody else has. So we've had feedback from the frontline managers who just almost can't believe the scale and the pace, but also the thinking in terms of continuous improvement, which I think Nissan can probably definitely say that they're world class when it comes to lean and CI, and therefore you learn from those sorts of people. Yeah, so we've made great progress, and the programme that you and I have been collaborating on for the last 18 months. So our organisation identified that the frontline manager role, particularly the manufacturing FLM, your typical shift manager role in a factory, that was a pivotal role. We recognised that historically it was an underinvested in role, and therefore we had to go and do something specific about it. So working with yourself, the 12 indicator model we've used to actually build our strategy on, and really what it boils down to, if I have to boil it down to anything, it would be that we want our FLMs to be thought of and to see themselves as mini MDs, operating their own business on their own shift, obviously working within a framework. But if we can create that mentality within the FLM population, that's just going to grow the business and the efficiency of everything that we do. There are so many ways that we can improve that performance via the FLMs. They're the people who actually, in the first instance, create the engagement on the shop floor. They're the guys who, hour by hour, are the custodians of the quality, the health and safety, the customer service, the output. You have to have those guys completely aligned to the fundamental messages and values that the business is built on. We've recently held an all FLM day when we got the whole of the FLM population together, and we discussed our strategy for the site and for the corporation, and that led into what they are going to be doing and their own promises. And since that meeting a couple of months ago, I've actually seen some of them demonstrating, achieving their promises. And if I can give an example, so the age-old problem in any sort of factory is trying to balance gross output with quality, and you tend to find that you concentrate on one at the detriment of another, And we made it really clear on the day that the two are linked, and therefore you need to be talking to your teams in the language of quality and output and quality. And the FLMs have really taken that on board, and I've seen them talking to their teams with that kind of language. It's green shoots at the moment, but we've seen our defect parts per million begin to come down, and the overall gross output begin to go up. We need to see that over a longer period of time to really be able to say yes, there's a demonstrable trend there. But as with anything, you've got to make a start. So yeah, it's the first steps on the journey. So there are a number of similarities and parallels between the Ardagh Doncaster site and my site at Featherstone. They're big manufacturing sites, fairly traditional in terms of the workforce and the culture on the sites. And so to see something working at Ardagh Doncaster, that gave me confidence that I'd be able to reproduce it at Featherstone. Featherstone is a good site. It's one of the flagship sites in the UK for DS Smith. But as you said right at the start, our journey is from good to great. Good is no longer good enough. We have to be great. And part of that journey is to actually get a grip of the core behaviours, which ultimately over time leads to the culture. And what restorative practice has enabled us to do is to begin to get a grip of those behaviours in such a way that people are actually thinking about how they act, why they've acted like that. And so it's been really helpful in rebuilding and restoring relationships on a day-to-day basis where people, they will come into conflict. There will be quite challenging situations, but by giving them a model and a language, a common language that people can use, it just helps that rebuilding. Yep, so I've seen it in practice. We've used it on quality issues. So we've held RP quality circles. We've also used it on a couple of occasions where there have been some quite tricky conversations to be had between people. So for instance, we've used it at the informal stage of a couple of grievances, whereas typically in the past, those grievances would have gone all the way through the process. We've been able to use RP right at the very beginning and resolve the situation in an informal way. Yeah. So I think some of the guys that have used this can see that it is the way that we're going to be working. This isn't a fad. This isn't a project. The management team at the site have adopted this as how we are going to conduct ourselves. And a couple of the guys have come up to me to say it's really refreshing to actually be asked, what they think. So one of the first questions you ask is what happened, as opposed to immediately trying to dive into the detail and judge and maybe try and reach conclusions. And we all walk around with our little RP
great questions
question prompter. So it is making a difference.
Okay, well, we're delighted. So a big thank you. This relationship will continue for some time.
Yep, so do I, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, many thanks.
Thanks, Graham.